When my son Jonathan invited me to lunch after I refused him my inheritance, I thought we were finally going to reconcile. But when I arrived at the restaurant and saw two lawyers sitting at our table, I knew I had walked into a trap. My own son wanted to have me declared incompetent to get his hands on the $3 million my husband had left me. But when they started recording, I smiled and said, "That's wonderful. My lawyer is also recording this from the parking lot. My name is Catherine. I am 71 years old, and for 45 years, I was the most devoted wife you could imagine. I raised Jonathan as if he were my own son, because I adopted him when he was just 3 years old. My husband and I were never able to have biological children, but when we saw that little boy at the children's home, we knew he was ours. We gave him everything: private school, college, trips abroad, a house when he married Cynthia, a prosperous business. Everything. Absolutely everything. When my husband died 6 months ago, he left me an inheritance of $3 million. It was the fruit of a lifetime of work, of sacrifices, of smart investments. But Jonathan believed that money belonged to him by right. Mom, Dad would have wanted me to manage that money. He would tell me constantly, "You don't understand finances. You could lose it all." But I knew exactly what I was doing. I had worked side by side with my husband for decades. I knew every investment, every account, every financial move. The first time he asked me for the money, I told him I wasn't ready to make that decision. The second time, I was more direct. "Jonathan, that money is mine by right, and I will manage it as I see fit." His face changed completely. For the first time in his life, someone was telling him no, and he couldn't stand it. Cynthia, his wife, started calling me every day. "Catherine, don't be selfish," she'd say in that syrupy voice I detested. "We have children to support, a mortgage to pay. You've already lived your life." As if my life had ended just because I turned 70. As if I had no right to enjoy what my husband and I had built together. The visits became less frequent. The grandchildren stopped coming to the house. Jonathan began to treat me like a burden, as if my refusal to hand over the money was an unforgivable betrayal. "After everything we did for you," Cynthia would say, "this is what we get. An ungrateful mother who doesn't think about the well-being of her family." But I had a secret they didn't know about. For the past few months, I had been documenting every conversation, every threat, every attempt at manipulation. My friend Margaret, who worked at the bank, had helped me protect my accounts and had witnessed the pressure I was under. Additionally, I had hired Mr. Davies, a lawyer specializing in family law, who had warned me about the tactics that greedy relatives often use. "Catherine," Mr. Davies had told me, "prepare for the worst. When people like your son realize they can't manipulate you, they resort to extreme measures. Filing for a conservatorship is one of the most common. They will try to prove you lack the mental capacity to manage your own assets." Those words echoed in my mind when Jonathan called me that morning. His voice sounded strangely calm, almost affectionate. "Mom, I know we've had our differences, but you're my mother and I love you. How about we have lunch together tomorrow? There are things we need to talk about." For a moment, my heart filled with hope. I thought he had finally understood, that he was willing to respect my decision. I arrived at the restaurant in the red dress I loved so much, the same one I wore on my last anniversary with my husband. I wanted to look good. I wanted Jonathan to be proud of his mother. But when I walked in and saw the table, I knew immediately that something was wrong. Jonathan was sitting next to Cynthia, and across from them were two men in suits I didn't know. "Mom, come, sit down," Jonathan said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'd like you to meet Mr. Wallace and Mr. Finch. They're attorneys. We want to talk to you about your financial situation." My blood ran cold. Financial situation. As if I were a child incapable of handling my own money. Mr. Wallace, the older of the two, began to speak in that condescending tone men use when they think women don't understand anything. "Mrs. Catherine, we have reviewed your situation, and we believe it would be advisable for someone younger and with more experience to manage your assets. It's for your own good." "My own good?" I asked, feeling anger begin to boil in my chest. "Who decided I can't manage my own money?" Cynthia shot me a look full of contempt. "Catherine, don't be dramatic. We just want to protect you from yourself." At your age, it's easy to make wrong decisions. It was then that Mr. Finch took out a recorder and placed it on the table. Ma'am, we need this conversation to be recorded for the legal proceedings. Legal proceedings. The words hammered in my mind. My own son was taking me to court. But then I remembered Mr. Davies' words. If they ever try to record you or document anything without your consent, smile and tell them you have your own recording too. And that's exactly what I did. I smiled with all the tranquility in the world and said, "That's wonderful." My lawyer is also recording this. From the parking lot, the silence that followed my words was devastating. Jonathan turned pale. Cynthia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, and the two lawyers looked at each other in a panic. "What lawyer?" "Mr." Wallace stammered, trying to maintain his composure. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Jonathan asked with a nervous laugh that fooled no one. I kept smiling, savoring every second of their confusion. Mr. Davies is out there in his car documenting all of this. Did you really think I would come to an ambush alone? Cynthia was the first to recover. "Catherine, don't be paranoid. No one is ambushing you. We just want to help you." Her voice had lost all its usual feigned sweetness. Now it sounded harsh, desperate. "Help me?" I repeated, tasting the irony. "Help me do what? Hand over my money so you can continue living like parasites?" Jonathan slammed his fist on the table. "That's enough. Stop playing the victim. That money is ours too. Dad worked his whole life thinking about us, about his family." "His family," I murmured, feeling tears threaten to spill. "And what am I then? The maid who took care of you for 40 years? Mr. Finch," the younger lawyer, tried to regain control of the situation. "Mrs. Catherine, we understand this is difficult, but we have testimonies that you have been behaving erratically lately, isolating yourself, making questionable financial decisions." "Testimonies from whom?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. "From your family, who is concerned about your mental well-being." I burst out laughing, a bitter laugh that came from the depths of my soul. "Mental well-being? Since my husband died, Jonathan, you haven't come to see me even 10 times. Cynthia, you haven't asked me how I am even once. The only ones who have cared about my well-being have been my friends and the staff at the bank, who have known me for decades." Mr. Wallace pulled a folder from his briefcase. "We have several documents here that show you have been spending money compulsively. Strange transfers, unnecessary purchases." I held out my hand. "Show them to me." When I saw the papers, I couldn't help but smile again. This? The transfers to the savings account I opened for my grandchildren? The donation I made to the children's home where we adopted Jonathan? The purchase of medication for Margaret, who doesn't have health insurance? Jonathan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He knew his arguments were falling apart, but his greed was stronger than his shame. "Mom, you don't understand. You can't just be giving money away to anyone. We have debts, responsibilities." "And are those my responsibilities?" I asked him. "When did your debts become my problem?" Cynthia leaned forward, her eyes shining with rage. "Listen to me carefully, Catherine. We have sacrificed our time, our energy, taking care of you all these years. We take you to the doctor, we buy you medicine, we visit you when you're lonely." "Took care of me?" I exploded. "Took me to the doctor? I drive my own car, I pay for my own medicine, and you visit me only when you need something." The mask finally fell. Jonathan stood up, his face twisted with anger. "You're a selfish and ungrateful old woman. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Preferring strangers over your own family." His words hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I had come too far to back down. "Strangers?" I whispered, feeling as if I'd been slapped. "Margaret has been my friend for 30 years. She was with me when your father had his heart attack. She was with me at the funeral. Where were you? Asking when the will was going to be read." Mr. Finch tried to calm the situation. "Ma'am, we understand there are emotions involved, but the fact is, you need financial supervision. We have the papers here to begin the conservatorship process." He pulled out a thick folder full of legal documents. "We just need you to sign here to start the process." I looked at the papers and then at my son. My little boy, the one who had come into my arms with eyes full of fear, whom I had comforted through so many nightmares. The same one who now looked at me as if I were his enemy. Do you really think I'm going to sign my own death warrant? Don't be dramatic, Cynthia said. No one is trying to kill you. You'll just have supervision over your expenses. You can continue living in your house. You can continue to live your normal life. Under your supervision, I added, making my own son my legal guardian so he can manage my money as he pleases. Mr. Wallace cleared his throat. Mrs. Catherine, you have to understand that this is inevitable. With or without your cooperation, the process will move forward. We have enough testimony and evidence to prove that you are not in a condition to manage your estate. His threat was clear and direct. Evidence? I asked, staying calm even though my heart was pounding like a drum. What evidence? Mr. Finch opened another folder. Testimonies from neighbors who say you have been acting strangely, that you talk to yourself, that you don't maintain your house well, that you've had episodes of confusion. Every word was a lie, but they were so well orchestrated that for a moment I doubted my own sanity. Which neighbors? I insisted. I want names. Jonathan intervened quickly. Mom, the names don't matter. What's important is that you recognize you need help. We all get older. It's normal. It's normal. I repeated his words, as if they were poison. Is it normal for a son to betray his mother this way? Is it normal for you to conspire behind my back to steal everything I have? My voice broke a little, but I continued. For 40 years, I gave you everything. I had my youth, my energy, my unconditional love. And now that I can finally enjoy what your father and I built together, you come to take it away from me. Cynthia stood up abruptly. Enough of playing the victim. We have rights too. We are family too. Family? I stared at her. When was the last time you asked me how I was? When was the last time you came to the house without asking for something? When was the last time you treated me like a person and not like an ATM? The restaurant began to fill with curious glances. Other tables started turning toward us, whispering among themselves. Cynthia noticed and lowered her voice, but her venom remained the same. Catherine, you're making a scene. This isn't necessary. A scene? I repeated, feeling the humiliation turn into a cold, calculated fury. You know what a scene is? My own son inviting me to a restaurant with lawyers to have me declared insane. Mr. Wallace tried to regain professional control. Ma'am, we understand this is emotional, but the facts are the facts. We have medical documentation that suggests cognitive decline. He pulled more papers from his briefcase. Your primary care physician has reported episodes of forgetfulness, temporary disorientation. My doctor? I asked incredulously. Dr. Ramirez? When did you speak with him? Jonathan avoided my gaze. Mom, Cynthia called him last week. We were worried about you. Worried? My voice rose again. Or looking for ammunition for your lawsuit? Mr. Finch nodded, as if he had just confirmed something important. See, ma'am, this proves exactly what we're saying. You're paranoid, aggressive. You see conspiracies where there are none. I fell silent for a moment, letting them absorb what they had just said. Then I smiled. That smile I had learned to perfect over decades of marriage when I had to handle difficult situations. You know what? You're right, I am paranoid. The four of them visibly relaxed, thinking I was finally giving in. I'm paranoid because for the last 6 months, I have been documenting every conversation, every threat, every attempt at manipulation you have made against me. The look of triumph vanished from their faces. What are you talking about? Jonathan mumbled. I'm talking about the recordings I have of Cynthia telling her sister that I was a stupid old woman who didn't know what was good for her. I'm talking about the phone conversations where you planned how to convince me I needed mental help. I'm talking about the audio where you, Jonathan, told Dr. Ramirez to invent symptoms of dementia in my file. The silence was absolute. Cynthia turned white as a sheet. That's impossible. You don't know how to use that technology. I don't? I took my phone out of my purse. Margaret taught me. It turns out that when you don't underestimate older people, you can learn incredible things, like the fact that there's an app that automatically records all the calls you receive. Mr. Wallace cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am, even if that were true, those recordings would not be legally valid if they were obtained without consent. Without consent? I laughed. You were talking to my doctor about my mental health without my consent. You were planning to have me put under a conservatorship without my consent. I think that gives me the right to protect myself. Mr. Finch tried to salvage the situation. Look, Mrs. Catherine, this doesn't have to be a battle. We can reach an agreement. Perhaps a partial guardianship, where you maintain some control, but with family supervision. Family supervision? I repeated the words as if they were a joke. The supervision of people who haven't worked a day in their lives and who live off the rental income that I pay for? Jonathan turned red with anger. We work. I have my business. Your business? I looked him directly in the eye. The same business that your father and I funded with $200,000? The same business that has never made enough profit to maintain the lifestyle you lead? The same business that exists only because I pay the rent on the space every month? Cynthia got up from the table. I'm not going to sit here and listen to these accusations, Catherine. You've changed. You used to be a generous, loving person. Now you're bitter and selfish. I've changed? I stood up too. Or I simply stopped being your slave? I stopped swallowing my pride every time you disrespect me. Mom, Jonathan said, and for the first time in months, his voice sounded genuine. We didn't want it to come to this. We just wanted to protect you. Protect me? I felt the tears finally threatening to spill. Protect me from what? From enjoying my own life? From making my own decisions? From having dignity in my final years? Mr. Wallace tried one last move. Ma'am, the process is already in motion. We have a court order to evaluate your mental capacity. You can cooperate voluntarily, or we can proceed through legal channels. A court order? I felt as if I'd been punched in the stomach. You already went to a judge without even talking to me? It was necessary, said Mr. Finch. We had enough evidence to justify a psychiatric evaluation. Evidence? My voice broke. What evidence? The lies you made up? The testimonies you bought? The conversations you twisted? Jonathan couldn't look me in the eye. Mom, this can all end here. Just sign the papers, and we can still be a family. A family? I repeated his words as if they were foreign. What kind of family needs legal papers to steal from each other? I headed for the door. But before I left, I turned back to them. You know what the saddest part of all this is? For 40 years, I thought I had raised a man of honor. I thought the values I tried to instill in you meant something. I thought the love I gave you counted for something. Cynthia shouted from the table. Catherine, you can't just leave. We have to resolve this. Resolve what? I turned to her. Resolve how you're going to steal my dignity? Resolve how you're going to justify having me declared incompetent? Resolve how you're going to live with the conscience of having betrayed the person who loved you most? Jonathan stood up. Mom, wait, don't leave like this. Like what? I asked him. With dignity? With my head held high? Or would you prefer I leave crawling and begging like you hoped I would? Mr. Finch tried to intervene. Ma'am, if you leave now, the process will continue without you. It will be worse for everyone. Worse for everyone? I laughed. Or worse for you? Because for me, the worst has already happened. The worst was discovering my own son was capable of this. The worst was realizing that for years, I was just a source of money for you. The worst was understanding that I was never a mother to you, Jonathan. I was just a provider. I walked toward the door, feeling every eye in the restaurant on me. But for the first time in months, I didn't care what strangers thought. You know what? I stopped at the door and shouted loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear me. Thank you for showing me who you really are. Thank you for teaching me that at 71 years old, I can still learn to defend myself. And thank you for proving to me that blood isn't always thicker than water. I walked out of the restaurant with my head held high, but as soon as I got to my car, I collapsed. I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband's funeral. I cried for the son I thought I had and who never existed. I cried for the years of wasted love. I cried for the family I thought I had built, which turned out to be a lie. But I also cried with relief. I had finally seen the truth, and I finally knew what I had to do. I cried for 20 minutes in the parking lot, but they weren't tears of defeat, they were tears of liberation. For the first time in months, I saw the situation with total clarity. My son wasn't a victim of Cynthia's influence. My son was exactly like her. Greedy, manipulative, capable of anything for money. As I dried my tears, I saw in the rearview mirror that Mr. Davies was getting out of his car and walking toward me. "How are you feeling?" he asked me in that calm voice that was so reassuring. Like they ripped my heart out, I answered honestly, but also like I can finally breathe. "Mr. Davies nodded sympathetically. "Did you get everything you needed?" He held up his phone, where he had been recording the entire conversation from outside the restaurant. "Every word, every threat, every lie. Perfect," he said. "Now we have evidence of coercion, fraud, and conspiracy to commit a crime. But, Catherine, this is just the beginning. They are going to fight back hard." "I know," I murmured, thinking of the court order they had mentioned. "Can they really force me to undergo a psychiatric evaluation?" "They can try," Mr. Davies replied. "But with the recordings we have, any honest judge will see this for what it is. A shakedown." As I drove back home, my mind was working at full speed. For years, I had been the woman who gave in, who kept the family peace at any cost. The one who paid the bills without protest, who smiled when I was disrespected, who pretended not to hear when they spoke of me as if I were a burden. That woman had died in the restaurant. The woman driving home was completely different. When I arrived, I found an envelope under my door. With trembling hands, I opened it. It was an official summons to appear before a judge for a mental capacity evaluation. The process had formally begun. Jonathan and Cynthia had made their move even before speaking with me. It had all been a charade from the start. The lunch invitation, the lawyers, the recording. It was all planned to make it look like they were giving me a chance to cooperate. I immediately called Mr. Davies. "The summons just arrived," I told him. "How much time do we have?" 2 weeks, he answered, after I read him the document. "Perfect. That's enough time to prepare our defense. But Catherine, there's something you need to understand. This is going to be a war. They will try to destroy your reputation. They will lie about you. They will use everything they can against you." "And what do you suggest I do?" I asked, feeling a strange calm take hold of me. "That you do exactly the opposite of what they expect. Don't hide. Don't be ashamed. Don't act like a victim. Go out, live your life, show that you are perfectly sane, but also start making decisions that protect your assets." That same afternoon, I called the bank and requested an appointment with the manager. For 40 years, I had been an exemplary client. I had never had a problem. I had always paid everything on time. When I explained the situation, he was outraged. "Mrs. Catherine, anyone who knows you are perfectly sane. What do you need us to do?" "I want to protect my accounts," I told him. "I want to make sure that no one but me can access them, no matter what any legal document says, until this is resolved." The manager, a man in his 50s who had known me since he was a junior executive, nodded immediately. "Consider it done. We can also provide you with a complete history of all your transactions for the past 5 years to prove you have always managed your finances responsibly." I left the bank feeling empowered for the first time in months. But when I got home, I found Cynthia waiting for me in my garden. She was sitting on my front steps, as if she had every right to be there. "Catherine, we need to talk," she said as I got out of the car. "Talk?" I looked at her in disbelief. "After what you did today? After conspiring behind my back for months?" "Listen to me," she said, standing up. "This is getting out of control. You know Jonathan loves you. He's just confused, worried about you." "Confused?" I repeated the word as if it were poisonous. "Worried? Cynthia, I saw the papers. You had everything prepared before you even spoke to me. This isn't confusion. This is premeditation." Cynthia changed her tactic. "All right, maybe we were wrong in our approach, but the principle is still the same. Catherine, you're going to die someday. What's going to happen to all that money? Are you going to leave it to strangers while your own family struggles financially? When did you stop being my family and become my creditors?" I stared at her. "Don't be dramatic," she said, reverting to her usual condescending tone. "You know perfectly well what I mean. Jonathan is your son. The grandchildren are your blood. You have obligations to them." "Obligations?" I felt the familiar anger rise in my throat. What obligations do I have to people who only seek me out when they need money? What obligations do I have to a daughter-in-law who constantly disrespects me? Cynthia stepped closer, her eyes gleaming in a way I didn't like. Catherine, you can do this the easy way or the hard way. If you cooperate, we can arrange things so you maintain some independence. If you keep fighting, you're going to end up in a nursing home while we manage all your money. It was a clear and direct threat. A nursing home? I repeated her words, feeling something definitively break inside me. Is that your solution? Lock me away in a home so you can steal my inheritance in peace? Cynthia shrugged. It's not stealing if it's legally ours. And if a judge determines you can't take care of yourself, then it's what's best for everyone. Best for everyone? My voice rose. Or best for you? Cynthia, for 10 years I have paid the mortgage on your house. For 10 years I have paid for my grandchildren's private schools. For 10 years I have financed your vacations, your cars, your whims. And this is what I get in return? Threats? You get love, she said with a fake smile. You get a family that cares about you. You get grandchildren who love you. They love me? I laughed bitterly. When was the last time one of my grandchildren came to visit without you sending them to ask me for something? When was the last time they called just to see how I was? Cynthia lost her patience. Enough of playing the victim. You have more money than you can spend in what's left of your life. It's selfish for you to cling to it when your family needs you. Selfish? The word hit me like a slap. Is it selfish to want to keep my dignity? Is it selfish to not want to be treated like I'm mentally incompetent? Is it selfish to prefer strangers over your own blood? She screamed. Margaret isn't your daughter. Mr. Davies isn't your family. We are your family. My family? I looked at her with all the contempt I felt. My family died 6 months ago. My family was my husband, who truly loved me, who respected me, who never made me feel like a burden. You are just people who live off my money. Cynthia started towards the street, but before she left, she turned back to me. Catherine, this is going to happen with or without your cooperation. You can keep some dignity if you don't fight, or you can lose everything if you insist on being difficult, but the result will be the same. Her words echoed in my mind like a death sentence. That night, for the first time in months, I couldn't sleep. Not out of fear, but out of absolute clarity. Cynthia was right about one thing. This was going to happen with or without my cooperation. But she was completely wrong about the outcome, because I had cards to play too, and I was ready to play them all. At 5 o'clock in the morning I was already awake, drinking coffee, and planning my counterattack. Cynthia had made a fatal mistake. She had shown all her cards. Now I knew exactly how far they were willing to go. A nursing home, a full conservatorship, total control of my money. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that during 40 years of marriage, I had learned to be a strategist, not just a housewife. I called Mr. Davies at 7 o'clock sharp. I need to make some financial moves before they freeze my accounts, I told him. What do you have in mind? He asked. I want to create an irrevocable trust. I want to donate a significant portion of my inheritance to charitable organizations. And I want to make sure that if something happens to me, Jonathan doesn't see a single cent of what's left. Catherine, Mr. Davies said carefully, that could be seen as an act of revenge by the judge. It could hurt your case. Revenge? I laughed. Is it revenge to protect my money from people who want to steal from me? Is it revenge to ensure my inheritance goes to people who actually need it, instead of to parasites who have already lived off my money for years? That same morning, I went to the bank and transferred $1 million to the children's home where we had adopted Jonathan. I divided another $1 million among 3 charities that helped elderly women who were victims of family abuse. The remaining $1 million I put into a trust that would only become active after my death, with Margaret as the primary beneficiary and administrator. When the bank manager processed the transfers, he looked at me with admiration. Mrs. Catherine, this is going to make a huge difference in many people's lives. That's the idea, I replied. I'd rather my money help people who really need it, not finance the greed of people who already have everything. Leaving the bank, I felt lighter than I had in months. I had protected my inheritance from the clutches of Jonathan and Cynthia, but more importantly, I had found a way to make my money truly matter. For the first time in my life, I was making decisions completely for myself, without thinking about pleasing anyone else. But when I got home, my phone was ringing off the hook. Jonathan had called me 12 times, Cynthia 6 times. There were even messages from Mr. Wallace, the lawyer. It was obvious they had discovered the transfers. Banks are required to report large transactions, and they had probably put alerts on my accounts. I decided to answer when Jonathan called for the 13th time. "Are you crazy?" was the first thing he screamed at me. "You just donated $3 million. Have you gone completely insane?" "Good morning, Jonathan," I replied calmly. "I'm glad to see you're keeping such close track of my financial movements, though I wonder how you found out so quickly." "Don't play games," he yelled. "You just threw away your family's inheritance. You just stole the future from your grandchildren." "Stole their future?" I repeated his words. "Jonathan, my grandchildren have parents who are supposedly able to support them. Or are you no longer working? Or has Cynthia become incapable of finding a job?" Cynthia took the phone. "Catherine, this is senile dementia. No sane person gives away $3 million to strangers." "Senile dementia?" I laughed. "Cynthia, I gave my money to organizations that actually help people in need. You know what senile dementia is? Financing the lifestyle of people who despise me for 10 years. Now you're going to return that money. You will cancel those transfers right now," Jonathan yelled in the background. "Or what?" I asked with a calm that surprised even me. "Are you going to speed up the conservatorship process? Are you going to call more false witnesses? Are you going to invent more evidence of my supposed dementia?" Cynthia hung up without answering, but 5 minutes later, I received a call from Mr. Wallace. "Mrs. Catherine, what you have just done can be considered evidence of mental incapacity. Gifting such large sums without consulting your family is exactly the type of erratic behavior we are documenting." "Erratic?" I asked. "Is it erratic to donate money to charity? Is it erratic to help people who are truly in need?" "It is erratic when it's done impulsively, without thinking it through, as an emotional reaction to our lunch yesterday," Mr. Wallace replied. "Ma'am, this only strengthens our argument that you need supervision." "Impulsively?" I laughed. "Mr. Wallace, I've been thinking about these donations for months. I have documentation proving I've been researching these organizations since before you all began your conspiracy against me. It was a lie, but it sounded convincing. Furthermore," I continued, "I have recordings of Cynthia threatening me yesterday with a nursing home if I didn't cooperate. Do you think a judge will see that as a family concerned for my well-being, or as extortionists trying to steal my money?" The silence on the other end confirmed I had hit my mark. That afternoon, I decided to take a walk in the park where my husband and I used to go on Sundays. I needed fresh air. I needed to remember who I was before Jonathan and Cynthia tried to destroy my self-worth. As I was walking, I ran into Susan, a neighbor I had known for years. "Catherine, how are you?" she asked, with genuine concern. "I've heard rumors that you're having family problems." "Rumors?" I asked, wondering how far Jonathan and Cynthia's lies had spread. "What kind of rumors?" Susan looked uncomfortable. "They're saying you're having memory problems, that you're acting strangely. They even said you gave away all your money because you're confused." I was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Jonathan and Cynthia were already planting the narrative in the neighborhood, preparing witnesses for the trial. "Susan," I said, looking her directly in the eye, "do I seem confused to you? Do I seem to be acting strangely?" She studied me carefully. "Honestly, Catherine, you look better than I've seen you in months. Calmer, more sure of yourself." "That's exactly the truth," I replied. "I'm better because I finally stopped letting them treat me like garbage." I explained the whole situation to her, from the pressure to hand over my inheritance to the trap at the restaurant and Cynthia's threats. Susan listened with growing horror. "Your own son is trying to have you declared mentally incompetent to steal your money?" she asked, incredulous. "Catherine, that's monstrous." "It is," I replied. "But it's also liberating. I finally see Jonathan for who he really island. I finally understand that for years I've been financially supporting people who despise me." Susan took my hand. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight," I answered without hesitation. "I'm going to prove that I am perfectly sane and that they are the ones acting criminally." How can I help? Susan asked. Could you testify on my behalf if necessary? I said. Could you tell other neighbors the truth about what's happening? And could you help me document that my behavior has been completely normal? Susan nodded firmly. Count on me, and my husband too. We've known your family for years, and we've always seen how they treat you. That evening, as I ate dinner alone in my house, I reflected on everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. I had protected my money. I had begun to build my defense. I had found allies. But more importantly, I had found something I had lost a long time ago: respect for myself. The following days were a silent war. Jonathan and Cynthia began a systematic campaign to destroy my reputation in the neighborhood. They went from house to house, telling the neighbors I was losing my mind, that I had given away millions of dollars out of dementia, that it was dangerous to leave me alone. But they didn't count on Susan also waging her own campaign, telling the truth about what was really happening. On Friday morning, I received an unexpected call. It was Maria, the director of the children's home to which I had donated the $1 million. Mrs. Catherine, I wanted to thank you personally for your generous donation, but I also wanted to ask if you are all right. We've received calls from people saying you donated the money because you are mentally ill. Calls from whom? I asked, though I already knew the answer. From a man who says he is your son. He is insisting that we return the money because you were not in your right mind when you made the donation. My blood boiled. Jonathan was not only trying to have me declared incompetent, but he was also trying to reverse my donations. Maria, I said in a firm voice, I am perfectly sane. I made that donation because you help children who truly need help, not like my family who only wants my money to maintain their standard of living. Jonathan is trying to steal everything I have, including my dignity. Maria was silent for a moment. Do you need legal help? We have lawyers who work with us on cases of elder abuse. That call gave me an idea. Maria, could you do something for me? Could you publicly document that my donation was made in full awareness and that you accepted it after confirming that I was completely of sound mind? Of course, she replied immediately. In fact, we can do better than that. We can hold a press conference showing how your donation will be used and publicly confirming that you are a lucid and generous benefactor. That same afternoon, Mr. Davies called with troubling news. Catherine, Jonathan has hired a private investigator. He's trying to find evidence that you've been acting erratically. He's also pressuring your doctor to change your medical records. Can he do that? I asked, feeling a mix of anger and fear. Can my own son hire spies to follow me? Technically, yes, Mr. Davies replied. But it also means he's desperate. People who have a solid case don't need to fabricate evidence. What do you suggest we do? That we do exactly what you're doing. Live your life normally, document everything, and prove that you are a completely functional person. But I also want you to consider doing something more dramatic. What do you have in mind? I asked. A press conference. Go public. Tell your story. Show the recordings of the threats. Turn this into a matter of public interest. The idea terrified and thrilled me at the same time. Do you think it would work? I think it's your best defense. It's hard to declare someone mentally incompetent when they're giving coherent press conferences. On Monday morning, 3 days before my court date, Maria organized the press conference at the children's home. I arrived dressed in my best outfit, a green dress my husband always said made me look elegant and confident. There were reporters from 2 local newspapers and a television station. My heart was pounding like a drum, but my mind was completely clear. My name is Catherine, I began, looking directly at the cameras. I am 71 years old. I am a widow, and my own son is trying to have me declared mentally incompetent to steal my inheritance. A murmur of shock spread among the reporters. A week ago, I donated $1 million to this children's home because I believe that abandoned children deserve a chance in life. My son considers that to be evidence of dementia. A reporter raised his hand. Mrs. Catherine, can you explain exactly what is happening? Of course, I replied, feeling a strange calm. For the last 6 months, since I inherited $3 million from my late husband, my son Jonathan and my daughter-in-law Cynthia have been pressuring me to give them the money. When I refused, they began to conspire to have me declared mentally incompetent. I took out my phone and played some of the most damning recordings. Cynthia's voice threatening me with a nursing home. Jonathan's voice saying the money was his by right. The conversations where they planned how to convince the doctor to invent symptoms of dementia. The reporters were taking notes furiously. "Why did you decide to make these accusations public?" Another reporter asked. "Because my son is using the legal system to commit a crime," I answered. "He is manipulating doctors, lying to judges, and hiring private investigators to persecute me. All because he refuses to accept that my money is mine, and I can do with it what I please." The conference lasted an hour. I answered every question with clarity and precision. I showed bank documents that proved I had managed my finances responsibly for decades. I showed the charitable transfers I had made, explaining in detail why I had chosen those organizations. By the end, even the most skeptical reporters seemed convinced that I was completely sane. That night, the story was on the local news. 71-year-old mother accuses son of conspiring to steal her inheritance. The phone rang nonstop. Susan called to tell me she had seen the interview and was proud of me. Margaret called me crying, saying she couldn't believe what Jonathan was doing to his own mother. But the most important call came from Mr. Davies. "Catherine, I just received a call from Jonathan's lawyer. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" I asked. "They want to withdraw the conservatorship petition in exchange for you retracting the public accusations and giving them a portion of the inheritance." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him to go to hell," Mr. Davies replied, and I couldn't help but laugh. But the sweetest revenge came the next morning. Jonathan called me, and for the first time in months, his voice sounded defeated. "Mom, we need to talk." "Now you want to talk?" I asked him. "After trying to destroy my reputation? After conspiring to steal from me? After threatening me with a nursing home?" "Mom, things got out of control," he mumbled. "We never wanted it to get this far." "You never wanted it to?" I laughed bitterly. "Jonathan, you hired lawyers before you even spoke to me. You went to a judge with lies about my mental health. You planned all of this for months. And now you're telling me things got out of control? People at work are asking me about the news story," he said. "My partners are considering pushing me out of the business. Cynthia is humiliated. The kids are asking why their grandmother is on the news." "And?" I asked him coldly. "Did you expect me to stay quiet while you robbed me? Did you expect me to allow you to declare me insane without a fight?" "Please, Mom," he pleaded. And for the first time in years, I heard real vulnerability in his voice. "Retract the accusations. We can fix this in private." "In private? Jonathan, the time to fix this in private was before you hired lawyers. The time to fix this in private was before you threatened me with a nursing home. Now it's too late." I hung up the phone, feeling more powerful than I had in decades. For the first time in my life, Jonathan was begging me. For the first time in my life, he needed something from me more than I needed anything from him. And for the first time in my life, I was going to use that power. The court hearing arrived faster than expected. Jonathan had expedited the process, probably trying to minimize the damage from the media coverage. But his strategy backfired. The judge, an older man named Judge Torres, had seen my press conference and came to the court with a clearly skeptical attitude toward my son's accusations. I entered the courtroom, accompanied by Mr. Say, Davies, Susan, Margaret, and surprisingly, Maria from the children's home, who had insisted on coming as a witness. On the other side were Jonathan, Cynthia, Mr. Wallace, and Mr. Finch, along with a psychiatrist I had never seen before in my life. Jonathan avoided my gaze, but Cynthia glared at me with pure hatred. "Counsel," Judge Torres began. "We are here to evaluate a petition for a conservatorship due to alleged mental incapacity. But I must say, it is highly unusual for someone supposedly suffering from dementia to give a press conference as coherent as the one I saw last week." Mr. Wallace immediately stood up. "Your Honor, that press conference is exact evidence of the erratic behavior we are documenting. A mentally stable person would not make such serious public accusations against their own family." The judge looked at him with disdain. "Counselor, if someone were truly conspiring to steal my inheritance, I would make public accusations too. Continue with your case, but I warn you, I will need very solid evidence to consider this petition." Mr. Wallace presented his evidence. The donations I had made, testimonies from neighbors who said they had seen me talking to myself, the falsified medical report. When it was my turn, Mr. Davies stood up with a smile that filled me with confidence. Your Honor, we are going to prove that this petition is nothing more than an attempted theft orchestrated by a greedy son and his manipulative wife. He began by playing the recordings. Cynthia's voice threatening me with a nursing home if I didn't cooperate. The conversation where Jonathan admitted to pressuring the doctor to alter my file. Your Honor, said Mr. Davies, these recordings clearly show that the petitioners are not concerned about my client's well-being. They are concerned about her wallet. Jonathan turned red with shame as his own voice echoed through the courtroom, admitting that he believed my money belonged to him by right. Then came the witnesses. Susan testified that I had been her neighbor for years and had never shown any signs of mental decline. On the contrary, said Susan, Catherine is more lucid and confident now than when her husband was alive. She has stopped allowing herself to be mistreated, and that is not dementia, that is personal growth. Margaret testified about my financial competence. Catherine has managed the family finances for decades. She knows every investment, every account, every move. The donations she made were calculated and generous decisions, not acts of dementia. Maria from the children's home testified that I had been in contact with them for months, planning the donation carefully. But the most devastating moment came when Mr. Davies called Dr. Ramirez to the stand. Doctor, asked Mr. Davies, can you explain to us exactly how you came to the conclusion that Mrs. Catherine suffers from cognitive decline? The doctor looked extremely uncomfortable. Well, I based my evaluation on reports from the family. Reports from the family? Mr. Davies interrupted. Not on an actual medical examination? No, Mrs. Catherine has not come for a consultation in the last 6 months. So, doctor, you diagnosed dementia without even examining the patient? The doctor turned pale. I trusted her son's reports. Mr. Davies then played the recording where Jonathan admitted to pressuring the doctor to invent symptoms. Doctor, Mr. Davies continued relentlessly. Is this your voice on the recording telling Mr. Jonathan that you could include some observations about temporary confusion in my client's file? The doctor could not answer. When it was my turn to testify, I took the stand with my head held high. Mr. Davies asked me detailed questions about my finances, my health, my recent decisions. I answered every question with precision and clarity. I explained exactly why I had made the donations, showing the research I had done on each organization, the months of planning that had been involved. Mrs. Catherine, Mr. Davies asked me, why do you believe your son is doing this? I looked directly at Jonathan for the first time that day. Because for 40 years I accustomed him to living off my money. Because I never taught him the value of hard work. Because I gave him everything without asking for anything in return. And now that I have finally set boundaries, he cannot accept it. Then it was Mr. Wallace's turn to cross-examine me. Mrs. Catherine, don't you find it strange to donate $3 million overnight? No, I replied calmly. I find it strange to have financed the lifestyle of people who despise me for 10 years. That was a bad financial decision. Don't you feel you have obligations to your family? Mr. Wallace insisted. What obligations? I asked him. The obligation to allow them to steal from me? The obligation to financially support adults who are capable of working? The obligation to hand over my dignity along with my money? The courtroom fell silent. Your Honor, Mr. Wallace said desperately. A normal mother would not treat her son this way. This demonstrates an alteration of judgment. Counselor, replied Judge Torres in a cold voice, a normal son would not take his mother to court to steal her inheritance. Continue. The psychiatrist they had hired tried to argue that my donations were evidence of mental decline, but Mr. Davies destroyed him. Doctor, how many times have you examined Mrs. Catherine? None. Have you reviewed her complete medical history? No. Are you aware that she has a master's degree in business administration and managed the finances of a company for 20 years? I was not aware of that. At the end of the hearing, Judge Torres did not need to retire to deliberate. I have heard enough, he said in a firm voice. This petition for a conservatorship is clearly frivolous and malicious. The evidence presented not only fails to demonstrate mental incapacity, but it demonstrates the exact opposite: an intelligent woman defending her assets from greedy relatives. Mr. Jonathan, he addressed my son directly, what you have done here is despicable. You have lied to this court, you have falsified medical evidence, and you have tried to use the legal system to commit theft. I am seriously considering referring this case to the district attorney to investigate possible criminal charges. Jonathan collapsed in his chair. Cynthia began to cry. Mr. Wallace tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a gesture. The petition for a conservatorship is denied in its entirety. Furthermore, I order that all legal costs of this farce be paid by the petitioners. And, Mr. Jonathan, if I see your face in this courtroom again with another attempt to harass your mother, I will send you directly to jail. I left the courthouse victorious, but with a broken heart. I had won the legal battle, but I had forever lost the son I thought I had. As I walked towards the exit, Jonathan caught up with me. "Mom," he said with tears in his eyes, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we fix this?" I looked at him for the last time as his mother. "Jonathan," I said with infinite sadness, "some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals are unforgivable, and some mothers have to learn to protect themselves from their own children." After the trial, I thought Jonathan had learned his lesson, but I was very wrong. Instead of accepting defeat and trying to rebuild our relationship, he and Cynthia decided to escalate the war. 3 days after the judge dismissed their case, Jonathan appeared on a local talk radio show as a guest. The interview was devastating, but not in the way he had hoped. "My mother is being manipulated by strangers," Jonathan said on the radio in a broken voice, playing the role of the concerned son. "These lawyers and so-called friends have convinced her that her own family is her enemy. It's heartbreaking to see how unscrupulous people take advantage of a vulnerable elderly woman." I listened to the entire interview from my home, feeling a mixture of disbelief and rage. "She gave away $3 million in 1 week, Jonathan continued. "What sane person does that? My mother was always careful with money. She never made impulsive purchases. Now she's donating fortunes to organizations she barely knows. It was a masterful performance of emotional manipulation, painting me as a senile victim and him as the loving son trying to protect me." But Jonathan made a fatal mistake. When the host asked him about the recordings that had come out in the trial, he denied them completely. Those recordings were edited, taken out of context. "My wife and I never threatened my mother. We were only trying to make her understand that she needed help." He had just called a judge a liar on a public broadcast. Margaret called me immediately after hearing the program. "Catherine, this is unbelievable. Are you going to let him get away with this?" "No," I replied with a calm that surprised me. "But I'm not going to fight in the mud with him. I'm going to do something better." That same afternoon, Mr. Davies and I went to the radio station and requested the right of reply. The interview was scheduled for the following week, in prime time. During those days, Jonathan intensified his media campaign. He appeared on a morning television show, cried in a newspaper interview. He even organized a protest in front of the children's home where I had donated the money, demanding they return the money stolen from a sick old woman. The images of Jonathan shouting in front of the children's home while orphan children watched him from the windows were his own social death sentence. The comments on social media were brutal. "What kind of son goes after orphanages to get money back? This isn't a family dispute. This is pure greed. Poor lady. Having a son like that must be worse than having no children at all." When it was my turn on the radio, I entered the studio with a folder full of documents and my phone loaded with the original recordings. "My name is Catherine," I began, "and I am here to respond to the lies my son has been spreading about me for the past week." My voice was firm, clear, with no trace of the mental fragility Jonathan had suggested. "First," I continued, "I am going to play the complete, unedited recordings so the audience can hear exactly what my son and my daughter-in-law said to me." For the next 20 minutes, I played every damning recording. Cynthia threatening me with a nursing home, Jonathan admitting he had pressured the doctor, the conversations where he planned my conservatorship before even speaking with me. "These are the people who claim to be concerned for my well-being," I said when the recordings finished. "These are the voices of the loving relatives who only wanted to protect me." The host was silent for several seconds. "Mrs. Catherine, These recordings are devastating. They are, I replied. But there's more. I took the documents out of the folder. Here I have the bank records that show that for the last 10 years, I have transferred more than $500,000 annually to Jonathan's account. I paid his mortgage, his children's private school tuition, their vacations, their cars, even their credit card bills. $500,000 annually? The host asked, incredulous. For 10 years, I confirmed. $5 million in total. And when I finally decided to use my own money to help orphan children, he called me demented and selfish. The numbers were irrefutable, documented in every bank transfer. But there is something else the audience should know, I continued, feeling it was time to deliver the final blow. Jonathan is not my biological son. I adopted him when he was 3 years old. We gave him all the love in the world. We raised him as if he were our own. And now that I am 71 years old, he accuses me of not being his real family when I won't give him more money. The impact of that revelation was immediate. You adopted him? Asked the host. And he is suing you for your inheritance. That's right, I replied. My husband and I couldn't have biological children. When we saw Jonathan at the children's home, we knew he was ours. We gave him 40 years of unconditional love. And this is how he repays me. For the past week, I continued, Jonathan has said that strangers have manipulated me against my family. But the truth is, my family died 6 months ago when my husband died. Jonathan and Cynthia are just people who have lived off my money for years and who are now furious because I set boundaries. The interview lasted 2 hours. I answered every question with documents, recordings, irrefutable evidence. By the end, even the most skeptical host was convinced that I was the victim of an elaborate scam attempt. Mrs. Catherine, he said at the end, what advice would you give to other older people who are going through similar situations? Do not be afraid to defend yourselves, I answered without hesitation. Document everything. Seek legal help. Do not let them intimidate you. And above all, understand that blood is not always thicker than water. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones we choose, not the ones we got by genetic luck. That night, after the interview, my phone didn't stop ringing. Calls of support from neighbors, from strangers who had heard the program, even from other elderly people who were going through similar situations. But the most important call was from a national television producer. Mrs. Catherine, he said, I would like to invite you on my program next week. Your story has resonated with many people. I think you could help others who are being victimized by their own families. I accepted immediately. If my story could help even one more person, it was worth exposing myself publicly. But Jonathan did not remain silent. The next day he posted a video on social media, crying in front of the camera. My mother is being manipulated by people who want to destroy our family, he said through tears. These charities are using her for their own ends. My mother was a loving and generous woman. Now she is bitter and vengeful. The video had the opposite effect of what he had hoped. The comments were brutal. Are you really going to cry because your mom donated her money to orphan children? What a shameful son. Your mother is right to cut you off. This man is obsessed with money that isn't his. The video went viral, but for all the wrong reasons. That night, Cynthia appeared at my door. She looked defeated, humiliated. Catherine, she said in a tired voice, this has to stop. We're losing everything. Jonathan lost 2 important clients. My friends have stopped talking to me. The children are being bullied at school. And? I asked her coldly. And? She repeated, incredulous. Is that all you have to say? You're destroying our lives. I'm destroying your lives? I laughed. Cynthia, you started this war when you conspired to steal from me. You escalated it when you lied to a judge. You continued it when Jonathan decided to lie publicly on the radio. I am just defending myself. Cynthia stood in my doorway, tears running down her cheeks, but they no longer moved me. Please, Catherine, she begged, the children are not to blame for this. Jonathan lost his job. We're losing the house. We don't know what we're going to do. I looked at this woman who for years had treated me like dirt and felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Cynthia, I told her with a calm that surprised me. For 10 years you lived off my money without really working. I paid your mortgage, your luxuries, your vacations. You never thanked me. You never treated me with respect. And when I finally said enough, you conspired to steal everything from me. And the grandchildren? I interrupted her. The same grandchildren who haven't visited me in months because you kept them away from me? The same children you used as emotional blackmail to pressure me? Cynthia, you turned those children into weapons against me. Now live with the consequences. Cynthia left crying, but I no longer felt guilty. I had learned something fundamental at 71. It was not my responsibility to save people who had chosen to destroy me. For decades, I had carried everyone else's guilt. I had paid for others' mistakes. I had sacrificed my happiness to maintain a false peace. Those days were over forever. The following week, I appeared on the national television program. The interview was seen by millions of people. I told my full story, from Jonathan's adoption to his attempt at a conservatorship. I showed the recordings, the documents, the irrefutable evidence of their conspiracy. By the end of the program, I had received thousands of messages of support from all over the country. But the deepest impact came from charitable organizations. The director of a foundation that helped elderly women who were victims of family abuse contacted me. "Mrs. Catherine," she said, "we would like to invite you to be our spokesperson. Your story has inspired hundreds of women to report abusive relatives." I accepted immediately. I had finally found a purpose that went beyond my own dysfunctional family. 6 months later, Jonathan appeared one last time in my life. He came to my house alone, without Cynthia, without lawyers, without cameras. He looked defeated, aged, humiliated. "Mom," he said in a hoarse voice, "I came to ask for your forgiveness." "Forgiveness?" I repeated the word as if it were foreign. Forgiveness for conspiring to steal from me? Forgiveness for calling me insane? Forgiveness for dragging my name through the mud publicly? "Forgiveness for everything," he murmured, unable to look me in the eye. I was wrong. I was blinded by the money, by Cynthia's pressure, by my own frustrations. "But I love you, Mom. I have always loved you." His words hurt me more than I expected, but it was too late for sentimental tears. "Jonathan," I said softly, "perhaps you love me in your own way, but your way of loving includes lying, stealing, betraying, and humiliating. I can no longer live with that kind of love." He broke down in front of me, crying like the 3-year-old child I had adopted 40 years ago. But I was no longer the woman who ran to comfort him every time he cried. "What do I have to do for you to forgive me?" he asked desperately. "Give back the money? Get a job? Change completely?" "There is nothing you can do," I replied with a firmness that surprised me, "because this isn't about money. It's about respect, dignity, and true love. And those things cannot be bought or returned once they are lost." "But you're my mother," he said, playing his last card. "You'll always be my mother." "No," I replied, feeling something release in my chest. "Your mother died the day you decided to betray her. Your mother died when you chose money over love. Your mother died when you conspired to have her declared insane. I am just the woman who raised you, and that woman no longer exists." Jonathan left that afternoon and never came back. I heard through third parties that he and Cynthia divorced, that they lost the house, that he moved to another city. The grandchildren grew up without really knowing their grandmother. But it was no longer my responsibility. I had learned that you cannot save people who do not want to be saved. And you cannot love people who hate you for setting boundaries. Today, 3 years later, I live in a new house, smaller but quieter. Margaret comes to visit me every week. Susan and I organize dinners for other older women who have gone through similar situations. I work as a volunteer counselor for victims of family abuse, and my story has helped dozens of people find the courage to defend themselves. The charities that received my donations send me regular reports on how they are using the money. Children who now have an education, women who escaped abusive relationships, elderly people who receive dignified care. My money is doing exactly what I always wanted it to do, making a real difference in the world. I don't regret adopting Jonathan. He was an innocent child who needed love, and we gave it to him completely. But I do regret not setting boundaries sooner, not demanding respect, confusing generosity with self-destruction. I learned that being a good mother does not mean being a martyr. and that loving someone does not mean allowing them to destroy you. At 74, I finally understand something that took me a lifetime to learn. Real family is not the one that shares your blood, it's the one that shares your values. Real family is not the one that needs you for your money. It's the one that values you for who you are. And real family is not the one that takes you for granted. It's the one that thanks you every day for being in their lives. When people ask me if I forgive Jonathan, I tell them the truth. Forgiveness does not mean allowing them to hurt you again. Forgiveness means freeing yourself from hatred so you can live in peace. I have forgiven the child we adopted. But I will never forget the man he became. And that memory keeps me strong. It keeps me vigilant. It keeps me free. I don't regret adopting him. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the expense of self-destruction. But thanks to that painful lesson, I found something I never had before: respect for myself, power over my own life, and the peace of knowing that finally, after 70 years, I belong to a family that truly loves me, a family that I chose, and that chose me.